Andrew Abbott should not be blamed for the Reds' loss on Monday night to the Phillies, but he also should be the reason that they didn't lose in the first place.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. My name is Jeff Carr, and I'm a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. I've been hosting this podcast now for my 7th season, and I'm glad that you're alongside me here today. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day. And on this show, I always aim to deepen your understanding of the Cincinnati Reds and to put things into perspective, like we will later on in today's show, when we put the Reds' struggles in the clutch into perspective. In just a few minutes, I want to talk about the excitement that could be Chase Burns out of the bullpen for the rest of the season. But I'm going to start today's episode by being absolutely and totally unfair to Andrew Abbott. That's all coming up on today's episode that is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. All right, it is absolutely not Andrew Abbott's fault that the Cincinnati Reds lost on Monday night, though he did give up the runs that ultimately led to the Phillies taking the lead and winning the game. Tony Santillan gave up the home run there to Kyle Schwarber, but ultimately you can blame the lineup, and I'm absolutely okay with that. But this is where Andrew Abbott has put himself, in that when his team cannot afford to give up a run, he's got to be that guy to make sure it doesn't happen. We've been talking about Andrew Abbott a lot this year as being Ace 1B, the guy next to Hunter Greene, at the top of this rotation and arguably ahead of Hunter Greene because Andrew Abbott has been available where Hunter Greene hasn't. But he has been so good this year. And it feels so unfair to say you got to pitch a shutout. But in the 8th inning, when Terry Francona had given him the game, Terry Francona had trusted him, brought him back out in the 8th, and Andrew Abbott, for 2 outs, rewarded that trust. But then things fell apart. He gave up a base runner. He gave up a hit. He gave up the lead, and he gave the lead to the Phillies. Very fast. It can happen like that in baseball, especially when your lineup only gives you 1 run. And again, we come back to that point where you're probably screaming at me and you're saying, Jeff, this is on the lineup. This is not on Andrew Abbott. But a true ace who's over there in that other dugout, guy by the name of Zach Wheeler, doesn't give up that 1 run. A true ace gets that last out of the 8th and gets you into the 9th. And yeah, we need to see more hitting from the lineup, and we'll get to that here in a little bit on today's show. But for me, the big thing about Monday night's loss wasn't the 7 amazing innings from Andrew Abbott. It wasn't the 7 2/3 amazing innings from Andrew Abbott. It was the failure to get the 3rd out in the 8th. And I don't think that's fair. I completely begrudge that. If you think that I'm just being ridiculous right now when it comes to Andrew Abbott, you probably got a point. But this is the next step for him. This is the challenge, and this is why baseball is unfair. Because he went in there and he got 23 outs without giving up a run. He looked amazing. But it doesn't matter, because the moment that you give up that 1 run, you give up the game. And I would love to sit here and say that the Reds lineup was going to give him ample amount of run support. And quite frankly, they did that on Sunday, and the pitching staff just didn't quite hand it back, and they were trying to give the Pirates as many runs as they possibly could. But in this game, you had great pitching. If you somehow flip-flop the 2, then yes, the Reds lose to the Pirates, but they would have beaten the Phillies on Monday. That's just how baseball is sometimes. You just see this crazy stuff. But the performance from Andrew Abbott, the first 7 2/3 innings, gets completely erased by what happened there with 2 outs in the top of the 8th inning. And you see the Phillies get 4 runs that ultimately won them the game. And the Reds had base runners in the bottom of the 8th inning, couldn't bring them around to score. And then they went 1-2-3 in the 9th inning. And you can talk about that all you want, but there were opportunities early on in the ballgame for the lineup to really get something going for Andrew Abbott as well, and they couldn't do that either. But Andrew Abbott was making sure that he was playing the role that we have given him, playing the role that he has earned. We haven't given it because he hasn't earned it. He has pitched amazing this year. We're talking about a dude that we've now gone over 20, that was his 22nd start. And the way that he has pitched has been so phenomenal. Sorry, 21st game. I got ahead of myself, miscounting some different things. But he literally has a 2.41 ERA. He's been so good this year. So he's earned the ace moniker, the ace title. But to continue that, you've got to be your guy. You've got to be the guy. You've got to be your team's guy. In this scenario, you've got to make the pitches. You've got to get that final out. And I think at that point, Terry Francona would have pulled him. I don't necessarily know that had he had got one more out, that Terry Francona would have brought him back out in the 9th. I think we probably were talking about Emilio Pagan at that point and seeing if he can nail down the save. But it was just missed opportunity after missed opportunity in those at-bats for Andrew Abbott. I thought this would be kind of that exclamation point on his season, but now we kind of gotta wait for that one because it's been a really good year. And I just feel like Monday night was where Andrew Abbott could really put his stamp on 2025. And again, if you are the one that is saying, no, Jeff, you're missing the point, man. It's the lineup. They're not hitting. They got to get more than one run. I agree with you. I'm not saying you're wrong. But I'm saying if Andrew Abbott is who we think he is, he doesn't give up that one run. Because all he needed was one more out. He couldn't quite get it done on Monday night. It's unfair. It really is, but it's an unfair ball game. And I have been a guy in the past that when Hunter Green had a rough start, I'd say, but think about this. And I'd find this excuse and I'd find this optimistic point of view, and I would really try to spin that because I thought that is something that you should do when you're really talking about your guy that you should get behind. And I'm behind Andrew Abbott. I love Andrew Abbott. Not saying I don't. Not saying that this tarnishes my view on his season. But in one instance where he had a chance to show that in a playoff environment, because that game was absolutely a playoff environment. This whole week is probably going to feel a lot like the playoffs for the Reds because they're facing the Phillies and the Brewers. But as much as they had played perfect run-preventing baseball to that point, because the scoreboard was clean, he needed to continue it for one more out. I think he will. I think in his next opportunity, whenever that comes, I don't know that it's his next start, but whenever his next opportunity is to come up as a clutch pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds, he will. Because he has already this year a couple of different times. Just didn't happen for him this one time. But at the same time, he is the kind of guy that we should expect to come up clutch in this situation. When the Reds cannot afford to give up one run, Andrew Abbott is one of the number one guys on my list. I think he's the number one guy on my list right now on this pitching staff to say, all right, if we cannot allow one run, I want Andrew Abbott out on the mound. Just couldn't quite get the job done on Monday. But before Monday night's game even happened, Terry Francona pulled the curtain back for just a moment and let us in on the plan for Chase Burns for the rest of this season. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first call did not land and the plumber didn't answer the phone, Did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. Did you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? Open Phone solves that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more who's handling this? You, me, you. Open Phone handles all of that. Open Phone is offering Locked On Reds listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers. And August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for the bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL preseason predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. I mean, come on, Joe Burrow for MVP. It's going to happen this year. Everybody keeps talking about Josh Allen this, Lamar Jackson that. Who cares about those guys? Joe Burrow is going to get it done this season. The Athletic just called him like the tier 1 quarterback with Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, nowhere to be found in that argument. Go for Joe Burrow for MVP like I'm going to do on August 26th for FanDuel Futures Day. And you visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. If you are not an everyday participator in the Locked On Reds podcast, make sure that you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting app. Appreciate our everydayers so much. If you ever see me at a game or you see Steve at a game, definitely come up and say hey. Always appreciate you all. And if you're not an everydayer, like I said, hit that subscribe button. There was a nice positive update leading into Monday night's game, and this came from Mike Petraglia as he tweeted this out during the pregame press availability for Terry Francona. Tito said that they have spoken with Chase Burns today about the possibility of moving him to the bullpen and managing his workload the rest of the season. They have a rough idea of the innings limit for him, but nothing is in stone. Quote, we told him we don't have clarity yet, but he knows that there's an innings thing that we need to keep track of. And, you know, we're adamant and we're all kind of in agreement that we do not want this kid to stop pitching. So how we get to the end might have to get a little creative, but we just wanted to kind of tell him that. Even though we didn't really have a plan that's fully in place yet for for a number of reasons, Nick Lodolo, etc., there's some other factors that can factor in on the timing of that, unquote. That was from, like I mentioned, Mike Petraglia tweeted that out. So it's happening. The idea that I had kind of ported, and I know that Steve has really shot down a lot, of Chase Burns moving to the bullpen, at least for the rest of this season. This is not going to be forever. This is not going to be his new role. This is not going to be the Aroldis Chapman 2.0. We're not seeing him get stuck there. This is just how the Reds are going to get to the finish line in his first professional season without just cutting him off at the end of August. Now, some have speculated in the beat writing and some closer to the team than I am that have speculated that the innings limit is around 135. Which everydayers of the podcast will know I said about 120 to 130 innings. So the good news is it's slightly more than what I expected, but not a lot more. And if it's only 5 innings more, then that's starting him would get you to that plateau much, much faster. And you would talk about him not being part of any sort of postseason plans because the Reds are still in this race, folks. I firmly believe that. But he's at 34 1/3 innings pitch here in the major leagues. And you remember that there was a certain amount of minor league innings pitched that Chase Burns had, but Nick Krall tried to kind of play that down a bit and say, well, it's not 1-to-1 because those are lower stress innings and all this other stuff. But if it were 1-to-1, he would literally be at 100 1/3 innings pitched right now. So he's probably got one more start in him because I don't think this happens until Nick Lodolo returns. Kind of like what Terry Francona mentioned in the quote that Mike Petralia shared before Monday's game. But that would still mean that I think he makes one more start. Lodolo comes back. Hopefully Hunter Green should be back by that point as well. And so then you could envision him in the bullpen. And so if you're kind of going on that hard cap right there, about 130 to 135, that means you would really only have 6 or 7 total starts from this point. So if he makes one more, then you only have 5 starts from that point, and that's at 5 innings per. They've been having him go 6 innings whenever he's really going. So I think what's going to happen here is we're going to see him move to the bullpen, and that's going to help out the Reds in a lot of different ways. Because you're going to be able to move down. Like, I think when Nick Martinez moves to the bullpen whenever Hunter Green returns to the rotation, we'll see Luis May move down to AAA. As much as the upside on Luis May is evident, man, the floor is really low for a guy who cannot control where his pitchers are going. And so you remove him out of the bullpen and you see an upgrade there. And then you have an interesting decision to make whenever you move Chase Burns to the bullpen, because I think Chase Burns is better than Sam Moll, although you can make the argument you don't want to remove a lefty out of the pen during a pennant race. So there's that. So then, who do you look at? Because it feels like Scott Barlow's a little bit too reliable to be moving around. Graham Ashcraft, maybe? I don't know. That seems kind of tough. I definitely think there's a move to be made, but this is only good for the Reds. Because you've got this opportunity now where you're going to have a close ball game, and especially in some situations where, like, let's pretend for a moment it's Brady Singer's pitching. He doesn't have the best of games going. You have to pull him in the 4th. But then you get to put in Chase Burns. Or maybe it's one of those games where Nick Lodolo's curveball isn't quite working. He's not locating. He's not hitting the back foot like he needs to with that curveball. And so he's really had to labor through the fastball and the changeup. And he's in the 5th inning, but it's clear he's not going to get out of it. Here comes Chase Burns. And he's going to get you 2 or 3 more innings. And then you're getting into the A squad of the bullpen and Tony Santillan and Emilio Pagan. He could be that guy to help you bridge between him and Nick Martinez. You've got a real shot here that Graham Ashcraft and Scott Barlow don't have to pitch as much as they have been. I mean, Scott Barlow, I keep joking about it, but it feels like Scott Barlow's on track to pitch 162 ball games in 2025. Nick Martinez and especially Chase Burns would raise the ceiling of the bullpen so much by moving there. And that is why it is so important that the Reds get Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo back. Because they've been doing what they've been doing. 2 games out. Again, the loss hurts on Monday night, but they're still just 2 games out of the wild card. And they've been doing that without 2 of their best pitchers, arguably their 2 best. And so you add your 2 best to the rotation. You move 2 really good guys to the bullpen. You take out 2 guys that are not up to snuff. There's a lot of additions being made here, some of it by subtraction. Now, I did see the point, and a friend of the podcast, Carlos Guevara, made this point. Why wasn't it already a plan that Chase Burns was going to move to the bullpen later on in the season? That is an interesting question. Because the way that Terry Francona worded this quote was that this was just something they cooked up overnight. I gotta believe it was on the books a little bit earlier. But I also don't necessarily know that they wanted to be presumptuous and say, man, this kid is just going to shove as good as he has been. And we've done this. And if you haven't seen it, I'll put the link up right here for the episode where I explained why if you look at Chase Burns' ERA and you think you know who he is, then you're wrong. because he's so much better than that. Everything else is saying that he's so much better than that. So you move a guy like that to your bullpen. You can employ him as you need to. You're going to give your bullpen, some of your other guys in your bullpen, a little bit of a rest with that. You won't have to pitch them as many days as you have been. This is a win-win. Fantastic idea. And I'm really looking forward to seeing exactly when this can get going, because a lot of it depends on Nick Lodolo. There was a quote that Terry Francona had on him that he's throwing one of those plyo balls. They don't have seams on them, and they're going to see how his finger reacts. If there's a positive reaction from it, they don't nothing happens there, then they'll graduate him to throwing a regular baseball with seams on it. And then if that's all good, then he'll make a start accordingly, because as it stands right now, everybody believes he's only going to face the minimum IL stint. So he only misses 2 starts. And so we wouldn't be that far off from that. And if that's the case, we're talking about by the end of next week, Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo are back in the rotation. And this pitching staff gets better. And that's pretty fun. But there's also the unfun side of what things are going on right now, because when you look at this Cincinnati Reds ball club, they've been in a bad way when it comes to clutch hitting lately. But whether that's a phase or a trend for the whole season, that's another thing entirely. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Game Day Hue, and so is this hat that I'm wearing. For Reds fans like myself, this one hits the mark. It's got the great red color. It's got a nice white cord on it. I love the hats with the cords. I really think they're a nice style. And Game Day Hue has all the best style when it comes to your team, but they keep it subtle. It's the kind of hat that reps your team without screaming. So you can wear it everywhere you go. You can wear it on the course. You can wear it at family barbecues and events and things like that. You can wear it all the time. That's what Game Day Hue is about, because they make clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. Whether you're looking for Reds, Bengals, Cincinnati Bearcats, Ohio State Buckeyes, whatever those guys do. Game Day Hue's got you covered for all of it. Check him out today. And with the code MLB15, you'll save 15% off at GameDayHue.com. That's GameDayHue.com. The code even stacks, so you can put together some bundle deals and get stocked up. Now, let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GameDayHue.com, and the code is MLB15. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcasting app. We're on every single one of them, so check us out there today. Also, by the way, coming up for you on Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we got a live show coming your way. We haven't done a live show in a while, and I'm solo today and tomorrow, but Thursday afternoon, Steve will rejoin me, and we will be live. We'll be previewing the weekend ahead. We'll be looking at some of the bigger storylines coming out of this Phillies series, and, of course, we'll be talking with you in the comments section, so make sure you jump in live with us. That's 3 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. All right, so the big thing here recently, and again, I will go back to my earlier point from the first segment. If you are blaming the lineup on Monday night, you're not wrong. And I agree with you. I just thought that I expected more out of ace Andrew Abbott in that 8th inning with 2 outs. But the lineup is absolutely at fault for why the Reds did not win on Monday. There were opportunities. There were guys on base. There were opportunities to get more than 1 run. And it's really hard to win a ball game when you only score 1 run. We talked about this a couple of days ago, that when the Reds score at least 4 runs, they are infinitely better than when they score 3 runs or less. But a big part of that has been how the Reds handle clutch situations. And I'm kind of looping this in. I'm saying when a guy gets on base, and we're going to split out, runners in scoring position or just guys on base in general. And so that means that there's happens to be a guy on first base, but not necessarily somebody on second or third. Because here recently, they've been abysmal in all those situations. Since August began, if there's a guy on base, the Reds have a WRC plus, so basically the same as OPS plus. It's a statistic that tries to encapsulate a hitter's value and puts it in one number, with 100 being a league average hitter. The Reds since August, their number is 88 WRC plus. They are 12% worse than league average with runners on base. They're 24th in Major League Baseball. Only 6 teams are worse than them during this time. And that's a tiny sample size. And the reason that I started with that is because it's a tiny sample size. When you start to expand it, let's expand it just a month. Let's go to the beginning of July. They're up to 104 WRC plus with runners on base. And they jump from 24th to 18th. So they're still not in the top half of the league, but they take a big jump forward. They're 4% better than league average. And then when you take it out to the entire season, the Reds have a 105 WRC plus with runners on base. 5% better than league average. All of this means that right now they are in a bad way when it comes to guys on base and trying to get them over and get them in. But it's a phase. It's not something that I think will continue. It's something that I think could right the ship today. Now, they are facing some good pitching these next 2 days in Ranger Suarez and Carlos Sanchez, so maybe not. But if they get guys on base, I'm expecting this to begin to sort of water find its level situation. Because they've got some guys, like right now, Miguel Andujar is really kind of pacing them in this. And Tyler Stevenson and Noelvi Marte. Those guys are pushing them forward, man. If those guys are at the plate right now and there's a runner on base, get ready for some fireworks. Because they're the ones that are getting the hits. It's the fact that right now, Ellie is not. Ellie's almost 50% worse than league average just since the month of August began. For the whole season, he's been fantastic. He's actually been 50. For the whole season, Ellie De La Cruz WRC plus with runners on base is over 150. Since August began, it's literally 50. So 100 points less. 50% worse than league average, 100 points less than how he has been all year. So he's in a bad way when runners on base. I think that's gonna figure itself out here in a little bit as well. I think it's a phase, and I think it's something that's going to go away. They've just seen some tough times. And honestly, one of those guys that had really struggled since the beginning of August had a nice day on Monday with a nice clutch 2-out hit. The reason that the Reds scored a run, Gavin Lux, with a good piece of hitting. We said it yesterday. He's a good piece of hitting guy. But he had a good piece of hitting to bring the run in and get the Reds the lead at that moment. And I think that we'll continue to see some guys that have really struggled in those positions figure it out a little bit more. Matt McClain is another one of them that, with guys on base, he's really had a hard time of it. Now, the interesting thing with this is if a guy moves up one base, so if you're just talking about situations where the Reds have runners in scoring position, the Reds have not been that good this year with that. They're ranked 21st in Major League Baseball with a 98 WRC plus. So for the entire year, with runners in scoring position, they're 2% worse than league average, or there's only 9 teams that have been even worse than them at that. That's one of those things that I hope finds its level a little bit, because as statistical evaluators will tell you, when it comes to baseball, runners in scoring position is very circumstantial. It's not predictive. It is more about what has already happened than it is predicting what's going to come. So I think that there's an element of that that could change for them, just based on luck, really. And I think that they've got some guys who can make some timely hits. As much as we like to make fun of and you know, we try to argue with the way that the Reds talk about power, right? Like, in case you're, and you're probably aware of, you know, the silly things that Barry Larkin said, where he's like, "Oh, a home run kills a rally," or like after Sunday's win, Terry Francona mentioned something about, "Yeah, you know, we hit a couple of 3-run homers today. That's not really what we do, but it's nice when it happens." he's talking about Earl Weaver ball. He doesn't like to play Earl Weaver ball. He likes to have a lot of guys that are good piece of hitting guys that can just keep the conveyor belt moving. Keep everybody moving around the bases, coming across home plate, getting those runs in. That's what he wants to see. He wants to see long rallies. They've got guys that can do that. It's just right now they've not been coming up with those hits in the right time. They'll come up with the hit with nobody on base and get on base, and then they'll stay there. Eventually, we're going to see that stuff work itself out, I believe. I think it's a little bit too circumstantial. People are hammering it right now. They're saying that because these statistics, and I focused on WRC+, you can look at batting average. The batting average is very mid. They're not a team that's in the top half. They're not a team that's in the top 10. But they're also not a team that is absolutely just diabolically bad at it. I think that overall, when it's all said and done, we're going to see this turnaround. And as long as everything else is working with this team, then we're going to see this team make the playoffs just like I think they will. They're 2 games out, guys. 2 games out. I saw somebody in my mentions the other day saying that they're done. If 2 games out is done, and you still have a month and a half left of baseball, they ain't done. Plenty more to come where that's left from. Reds got Ranger Suarez facing them tonight. It's going to be tough. We're definitely going to recap that. We're going to look ahead a little bit to see exactly how everything shakes out for this pitching staff. So much more to come on the Locked On Reds podcast all this week. I'll be back with you solo tomorrow. Like I said, Steve will be with me on Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. as we go live, getting you ready for the Brewers series on the weekend and recapping the big storylines of the Phillies and so much more. Talking with you on Thursday afternoon. But I'm also going to be back in your feed solo here tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe. That way you can get Locked On Reds in your feed every single day, because we've got Reds talk for you every single day. Now make sure you check out Locked On MLB. Sully got you covered with a league-wide look, and you got Locked On MLB Game Night. They watch every game, every night, so that you don't have to. But until tomorrow, you can always trust that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.